This is a first in a series that I'm going to call Little Boxes. No, they're not made out of ticky-tacky. No, they don't all look the same. And if you haven't got a clue what the hell I'm talking about, you can go and look that up later. No, little boxes in my case, because when I first started getting into building electronic circuits to make noise and something that was vaguely music, I built individual units and put each individual unit into a little box. So I was going to start with the first little box that I made, which is this one. Trying to get the light on this to show the camera on the camera. It's not working, is it? Oh, there we go. All very interesting, and I was really pleased with it, and it works really well, but it doesn't actually do anything at all until you plug other little boxes or gadgets into it. So let's have a look at some other little boxes and gadgets we can plug into it, and we'll get back to this one later. So the second box that I built was this one, which, as you can see, I've named it Neopunk. It's based on the Atari Punk console circuit design, and if you're interested in what that is, there's a link in the description. But there's loads and loads of examples of the Atari Punk console out there. It's been around for a while. You can even buy it in kit form if you are feeling like you don't want to get too experimental at this point. And essentially what it is, it's based on the 555 clock timer chip, which is wired up in such a way that it creates, it switches on and off. It's a timer, it can tick, 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 tick. But you can make it go tick, 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 tick in such a way that it produces a square wave, which you can tune to audio frequencies, so you get a square wave oscillator output, audible. What the Atari Punk console does is it uses two of those oscillators, and the output from the first one, which is a nice little square wave doing this, and you get the output from the second, is fed into the second one, which is doing its square wave, and when this one hits it, you get a kind of what they call modulation. So one has an effect and changes what the other one's doing, which can get quite interesting. So it produces basically a square wave type audio, which sounds pretty similar to the kind of sounds you used to get out of your old 8-bit games machines. Hence the association with an Atari console, because it sounds pretty much like those kind of sounds on the old consoles. So let's have a look what I've done with this one. Let's start with the box first. You've got a control for each of the oscillators, which controls the frequency of the square wave. On this box I've also added a volume control, because it can get quite noisy, and you know, not everybody wants to listen to the output of one of these boxes. There's an on-off switch. All of the little boxes that I'm using either run off a 9-volt battery, or they are a passive unit, which means they don't actually need their own internal power. They operate when voltages are passed through it from some other device. But this one runs from a single 9-volt battery. We'll have a look inside in a while, and you can see what's going on in there. A lot of the units on the schematics are shown have a speaker. The thing's connected directly to a speaker. I wanted to be able to connect this to other things, so instead of putting a speaker on there, I've put a little 3.5mm jack socket as an output. There's two more jack sockets on the top here. And these are labelled CV. Now, in synthesizer terms, CV stands for control voltage. And what a control voltage is, it's a variable voltage which can vary in different waveforms, or even just a kind of a switch if it's a gate voltage. And what it does, when you feed that voltage into the CV input of on a module, it will affect one of the parameters on that module and change what it's doing. In this case, there's a pin on each of the 555 chips, which is a CV input, and when it's wired up as an oscillator, what the control voltage will do is change the frequency oscillator. So in other words, it replaces the function of this it. Well, it doesn't replace it, it complements it, because you'll see when we demonstrate it later, what happens is that you can kind of change the base frequency of this, and then whatever's feeding into it will then modulate it around that frequency. So yeah, we'll have a look inside and have a look at what the circuit looks like. It's actually pretty simple. Okay, let's open the box on the Atari Punk console. So, yeah, that's just, I held the circuit board down with a bit of one of those double-sided sticky pads. It keeps popping up every time I open the box. It's not a problem. So, well, actually, yeah, let's pop up the circuit board. So there it is. That's the circuit. Tiny little thing. Built it on strip board, following a design that, like I say, I got the designs off the net. On this particular one, instead of using 2 separate 555 counters, I've used what's called a 556 chip, which is this long black thing in the middle there, which really is 2 555 counters in one single integrated circuit. It does exactly the same thing. It's just a slightly different layout, and you can see there's only probably about half a dozen more components in the circuit to actually make the thing work. There's lots of wires going everywhere, but that's because, as I say, I've wired 1 or 2 extra things in there. But essentially, you just need power in, the 2 oscillator control potentiometers, and some kind of output in its very basic form. As I say, they're all powered from a single 9-volt battery. And looking at the back here, what we've got is, these are the controls for the 2 oscillators. Oscillator A, oscillator B. So when we're twiddling the knobs on the other side to change the square waveforms, these were the oscillators I was changing. That's the back of the switch that turns the power on. There's a little LED there that tells me the power's on, so I don't leave it switched on and flatten the battery. That's the output jack. You can see there, I talked about, move in closer, I talked about the low pass filter being just basically the same as a guitar tone control. So you can see I've got a tiny little circuit board attached to the back of the potentiometer, and then there's a capacitor across the terminals of the potentiometer. That actually just provides a passive low pass filter. And then these 2 little guys here, they're the inputs for the control voltage, and this one is the volume control. So you can see, in terms of what's actually inside this thing, there's not a lot at all. I think the total cost of the components is something like £5 or £6. The most expensive bits are the sockets and the potentiometers. The circuit is kind of probably no more than £1 to build, if you know, maybe even less. And then the little wooden box came from my local craft store, and so there you go. That's all that's really inside the Neopunk. I'm not going to go through how I built it. I basically followed the instructions that I found from elsewhere on the internet. Look at the links below this particular post. And then kind of wired it into a box, made some stickers for the top, and plugged it in, switched it on, and well. Okay, so that's what the circuit looks like. What does it sound like? As I say, I haven't built a speaker into this one, but what I've got one of these things. It's a little amplified speaker. It costs a few quid, you get what you pay for. It's not hi-fi, it's not ultra powerful, you wouldn't go gigging with it. But for testing these little boxes, it's great. The nice one about this one as well is it's rechargeable. It's got a little plug a USB lead and it charges it. You can't play through USB, and it's not Bluetooth or anything, it literally plugs in. So, let's plug it in. So that's the speaker plugged in. I'll turn the volume down to start with because I don't want it blaring out. Turn the power on. And there we go. It's oscillating. So, oscillator A. Not really that great. So let's change oscillator B. Ah, now we're starting to get something. You can hear it stepping there. It's sometimes referred to as a step tone generator. So, you just heard it. I hadn't got the filter turned all the way up there. So this is the low pass filter. Now the low pass filter is pretty much it's a potentiometer control pot with a capacitor across it. It's pretty much it's a passive system, and there's no power supply to it. It's pretty much the same as what you get on the tone control inside a guitar, but you can hear. Provides a nice filter function. There's even a little bit of resonance towards the top end there. But instead, we've got the CV inputs. So what happens when you put a control voltage signal into the inputs? Well, straight away you can hear it's kind of having some kind of effect on it. I'm going to trigger it from a beat step sequencer, just because it's convenient. And you can hear there, the beat step sequencer is changing the frequency of the output. But if I can change the kind of the bass frequency that it's operating on. And that's going into the first oscillator. See what happens when we put into the second oscillator. You get a little bit more of a controlled output from that. And again, if you change the oscillator here, you can almost step it up. Because when the step tone comes in, you can kind of step it up a little bit to the tunes. And of course the filter still works. And you can change the speed on your sequencer. So, there you go. Atari Punk console with a few little modifications makes my real first success in producing some kind of sound with one of these modules. So yeah, there we go. The Neo Punk console. Have a go and build one yourself.